A bittersweet night for Seattle Kraken fans. On the one hand, the season ends. On the other hand, we get a win and we get to see a glimpse of what the future holds. Let's talk about it coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, coming to you after the Seattle Kraken get their final win of a season that was difficult. Get a 4-3 win over the Minnesota Wild, and we are going to talk about that on today's episode. But first, want to let you know that today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. That's right, the game you love, now available via Monopoly Go. If you have a competitive side, you're going to love Monopoly Go. It's a mobile hit and a twist on an old classic. Join your friends now and download Monopoly Go now for free in the App Store or Google Play. Talking about a competitive edge, we've talked about it here on Locked On Kraken. To be honest, sometimes that's exactly what was lacking. And, you could feel a little bit of the tension in the locker room afterwards. I think, again, I've been saying it for weeks now, but Dave Haxtell doing a pretty good job of keeping the team, at least through what he's saying in media, anchored in the fact that we missed the mission. We missed the overall goal to get to the playoffs, especially considering last year's run. And that fell short. I think, even Matty Beniers, who had a pretty good night and has ended the season pretty good, I was cracking up at the end of his media availability because, you could tell he was just giving answers to answer the question in as few words as possible. And, it was just that kind of season. It was that kind of season for the Seattle Kraken. This is a win, but there's so much that this team, I think, felt that they left in the can, that they left on the table. And I, for one, would agree with them. So we're going to do notes and quotes in the next segment, but I do want you to hear from Matty Beniers and his very short answers.
How do you think you improved getting closer to the net and playing in front of the net as the season wore along? You've mentioned it's something you've been trying to work on.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, Matty B was ready to get out of there. And again, it was a high-ish note. The Seattle Kraken get the win over the Minnesota Wild, but, I don't think we were feeling particularly good. Overall, we win the faceoff battle, 58.8% over 41.2%. Power play had 3 opportunities, 1 of 3 on the power play, gave up 4 opportunities, 4 power play opportunities for the Minnesota Wild. They convert 2 out of 4, including the very first goal within the first 5 minutes of the game. So, there's still some work to be done. We also, though, saw that special teams were a part of this game, and Yanni Gourde in particular doing a great job. Had 2 shorthanded goals, including an empty netter, and but we did give up a power play goal in the last 3 minutes of the game. So, a back and forth season, a back and forth game, but Yanni Gourde, 2 points, Brandon Tanev, 2 points. He's been someone that I think has been pretty quiet this season and might be someone that we have to have some serious conversations about in the offseason. Oliver Bjorkstrand, we're going to hear from Dave Haxtell about Ollie, but another solid game here. And on tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about the Coachella Valley Firebirds. You're going to have a familiar name and, for some, a familiar voice who's going to really break down things. We know the Coachella Valley Firebirds are in the playoffs, but they have a first round bye. We also are going to talk later on the show about the Kansas City Mavericks, who actually played their first playoff game against none other than the Tulsa Oilers. I'm back home in Tulsa. I've been on the road for a while covering women's basketball. So we should have some coverage of the postseason for our ECHL team and our AHL team coming up. And some names like Ty Cartier, like Riker Evans, like Shane Wright that we've seen in the last handful of games for the Seattle Kraken. We're expecting big things from them. So that's the sweet part. The bitter part is that this is a team that just never lived up to its potential. We got to be honest about that. And I thought it was interesting to hear Dave Haxel talk about Yanni Gourde, how he grinded. Again, I mentioned Oliver Bjorkstrand, how he grinded things out. This was a pretty solid game for Joey Daccord, who, as I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I wanted to make sure we were getting some time from Joey Daccord. He saw 16 shots. So, he saw 24 shots, 15 or 16 shots, even strength, 24 shots, pushed aside 21. So less than a 900 save percentage. Joey Daccord was really good for us for a really long time. But we've talked about fatigue. I think we overwork our players, and that's something that we're going to have to focus on. I also think sometimes, if I'm being honest, I said this last offseason. I said this even coming out of training camp. I was at training camp again this year. We're leaving. We got to do something about conditioning. So a little bit of a mixed bag. I don't know how y'all are feeling. Let me know in the comments on YouTube, especially. How are you feeling about the end of this game? I think it's a high-ish note. We want to end with a win. I'm here for that. And it's a little bit of a reminder of, again, what was left in the tank, what was left on the table, however you want to say it. So coming up on Locked On Kraken, as I said, we're going to hear from a few other people from the post game. I want you to hear from Joey Daccord. I want you to hear from Dave Haxel and really get into some of that. And then, of course, we're going to get you ready for playoff hockey. It started tonight for our franchise overall. And that's where we can really lean into some of the promise of this team. That and more is coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. So now, if you're a competitive person, I know I certainly am. And if you think that's true, then you have to check out Monopoly Go. Your competitive side is going to come out. I'm sure you heard that it has been downloaded over 150 million times. A nice digital, modern, mobile twist on Monopoly where you play not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in all kinds of wild locations, building up amazing cities that bring you cash money. But the best part is messing with your friends. Now, you can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like in classic Monopoly, but you can also heist their vault of riches for yourself. And the leaderboard shows who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon. But it's not just the competitive side that is going to win out. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. You know we are part of the Locked On, podcast network, and we have some great stuff coming up on the Locked On podcast network, and that includes, of course, our 24/7 streaming channel. It is programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the fluff. We get right to it. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Erica Ayala here with you, your host of Locked On Kraken. Mentioned it in the first segment, but have been away on assignment with CBS Sports. It's a big time for women's basketball. Caitlin Clark goes first overall, and your girl right here got to interview her shortly after she exited the draft floor. So that was pretty exciting, career moment for me, but we're back into the hockey. And I mentioned, you heard a little bit from Maddie Beniers, who again really wasn't trying to talk too much. And that's more or less what we got. And I'm not even mad. These are guys that they had to go through a lot. And that's kind of what the message was from Dave Haxtell. He knows that his team went through a lot. He knows that his team had to battle through a lot. And while I think you'll hear in the clip that he's very proud of that, again, I mentioned it in the first segment, there's also a balancing act between feeling proud and getting through those moments, but also knowing that there are opportunities that can be seized in the future. So let's hear from Dave Haxtell after this 4-3 win, over the Minnesota Wild.
Split road game that you like the team to play. They 12 shots against the first two periods, and they're just waiting.
Yeah, we ground pretty hard. For game 82, sometimes these games are, they're hard to play. But I like the way our guys we showed up and played from the drop of the puck. Second period was a good period to turn the momentum our way and put ourselves in a good position. And then obviously a little bit of a crazy third, but a good way to close it out.
So much special teams play, Dave. What did you make of both sides of that for you?
Well, our power play scored, but that was a big goal to get us going. We had a pretty good period, and we had to find a way to get one. As that game rolls on, and he's feeling good in net. That's it's an important one to be able to get, and that's kind of the way you got to find one on him, right? Is a little bit of net front traffic, and then, from there, I like the way we played. Like whether the specialty teams. Is a major factor or not. We did the job and came out on the right side of it.
Two for Yanni, shorthanded. How does that speak to the kind of guy he is and how he plays with that tenacity?
Gordo's he's a proud guy, and it's been a tough stretch. So he plays so hard every single night. I was just happy to see, him get rewarded for that. The shorty was obviously a huge one. We had a couple opportunities on that, shorthanded between he and Tanev, and it was nice to see him get that one. And then, obviously, to be rewarded with a couple tonight is fitting for him.
Are there lessons that the team can take away from what it's been through the last few weeks and had to endure and bring it into next season?
It's not 2 weeks, it's the entire season, and that's why you have to step back for a little bit of time and make sure that you take it all in, because there's an awful lot from this year that we have to walk away with, but it's not quite that simple. We've gone through some of the stress of the last couple weeks. It's not a fun stretch to go through, but what I just told our guys is I appreciated their will to continue fighting and battling, including right down to the wire tonight. Now we have to take a step back and make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure that we're not in this situation a year from now. And I'm not going to get into that today. That's for a few days down the road, but we'll get into that at the right time.
You hear Dave saying again, I keep saying it, but it's true that there's more to learn than just the tenacity of this team. You can't be in the same position again next year. If anything, you want to build on what happened the year before. And I just don't think this team did that. He alluded to that's not something that's going to happen tonight after the game. The guys are going to go back to Seattle, have their exit interviews. I know a lot of you who are everydayers and OGers know I was put out that we did not hear from Martin Jones last year. I will not be at exit interviews this year. So we'll see what we get as far as the video vault, so to speak. But, is that going to be telling again this year? I don't know. But there are a lot of questions. There is a lot of kind of looking in the mirror that I think needs to happen with this team. It's not inherently bad. I think some of it can be uncomfortable, but if you kind of lean into that, I've talked about the Mamba mentality. I know Joey Decord has talked about that in the past. There are opportunities to be had here. And it's not all bad. I think, Joey Decord is case in point of someone who really seized an opportunity. But seizing an opportunity doesn't mean that there isn't more work to do. So before we close out segment number 2, let's hear from Joey Decord. And then in segment 3, we'll get into the Kansas City Mavericks and also get you ready for tomorrow's episode where we go Firebirds Friday all the way. So former Firebird here who made the roster. And let's hear from Joey Decord.
Full NHL season. What are you going to take home and remember about it?
Honestly, it didn't go the way we wanted in terms of results, but it was still a ton of fun, and just grateful to the organization and the coaching staff for trusting me and giving me this opportunity. It was an absolute blast, and fortunately the results didn't go our way, but we'll learn from it and come back next year stronger.
How do you think the team played going through these last 4 games? I mean, it was obviously a difficult situation for everybody, and having to go up, against some teams going to the playoffs. And how do you think they came through it, just effort-wise?
I think we played great. Again, it was just one of those seasons where things weren't bouncing our way, and it takes a lot of mental strength and character to keep bringing your best every night, and such a competitive effort. And I think our group did that throughout ever since we've been knocked out. I think that's a testament to the kind of people and character we have on this team.
After a season like this, what does a team like yours do in the summertime? What do they go home and think about?
I think there's lots of different things. First off is definitely just regrouping, reflecting, taking care of the body, and then for me personally, I haven't had a long summer in a while, which is great. You don't want to have long summers, but I think the body needs it. Get rested up and get healthy and come back for next season at 100% and ready to go.
What do you think the team's going to take away from how this season went and carry it into next year? What lessons do you think they can carry into next year?
There's a lot to learn. I think when you go through tough times like this, I think it's just going to make us stronger. And we obviously have a big core of guys coming back next year again. So I think we'll just look at the season and take it for what it is, accept it, learn from it, try to take as much as we can from it, positively, and things that we can work on, and then go from there, starting day 1 next year at training camp.
You mentioned the wins didn't go your way all year, but nice to go out on a high note and get this victory now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. It's been tough sledding all year, and I think it was only fitting that we brought it down to the wire there at the last second. Guys made some huge blocks and some great plays all night, so kind of interesting to win it on an empty netter. It was the winning goal, but we'll take them any way we can get them.
Joey, you were going for it at the end, weren't you?
Honestly, I didn't even look. I just caught it, put it down, and just ripped it. They had a guy playing center field on me, but I figured if I just got it out, that was a good play, and if it went in, great.
I wanted to ask you about Jamie and Will. They played all 82 games this season. You get to see their work up close and personal. How valuable have they been to the team?
Huge. Anytime you can play all 82 games, I think that's just a testament to those guys and how they take care of their body and how they prepare every single night. And they're great pros and awesome people as well. So they're a treat to play with, and it's fun having them here every single game.
Joey Decord there talked about a lot of things, including, the sweet part also of having a longer off season is the recovery. And I think there are definitely some Kraken players, given all our injuries, that need that recovery. Coming up next on Locked On Kraken, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Mavericks, Game 1 against the Tulsa Oilers in the ECHL playoffs. As I said, that's what we're getting into on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our newish friends at Policy Genius. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. The marketplace will save you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. It helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. You can talk to a team of award-winning agents who will take you step by step through the process and will easily compare quotes from the US top insurers in just a few clicks, so you get the lowest price. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs, so Policy Genius will help you find get unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. It's got thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check life insurance off your to-do list with no time using Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in our description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. Again, that's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Closing out today's segment on if the top of the show and the middle of the show was bittersweet, I'm going to end on a sweet note here as we close out the show. That is because our very own Kansas City Mavericks take game 1 in the ECHL playoffs against the one and only Tulsa Oilers. Now, this is a game that Kansas City is hosting. They're the higher seed. We've talked about how they've been doing in the ECHL. And Tulsa actually scores first, but the second stanza, 2 goals for Kansas City. And, we love to see that. It's Schoenbart and Curry, as well as Cotton, who get the goals for the Mavericks. Tulsa did get one back in the third, but again, we got that goal from Cotton to solidify things at 3-2. So I've seen the Kansas City Mavericks play the Tulsa Oilers a bunch of times. You here on the show, and especially our Locked On Kraken insiders, have heard from the one and only general manager and head coach, Tad O'Had, especially with this Tulsa team. I'm pointing this way because the stadium or the arena is about a 5-minute walk that way from me here in the studio. This is a scrappy Tulsa team. Kansas City coming in, has a great record, best record in franchise history, top of the table in the division, but you're going to have to work for this. And it's Jack LaFontaine who gets the win overall. He saw 40 shots on goal, made 38 saves. So you like what you see from the Mavericks overall. I think I also like that the penalty kill was pretty solid. And you've heard Tad O'Had and some of the other guys talk about what they do on the penalty kill in particular. 50% on the Kansas City Mavericks power play. So a little bit of work there. The Kansas City Mavericks were outshot both in the first period. I just got back from basketball. The first period and the third period in a big way. That's where a lot of those shots that LaFontaine saw came from. 17 shots in the third frame to 7 from Kansas City. Now, again, Kansas City was able to get the game-winning goal from Cotton, but had to put in some work. And that goal from Cotton, comes in the last 3 minutes, of the third period. So you like the grind, you like the grittiness, you like that this is a team that can come back. Again, Tulsa scored first, but there are also some things that can be refined. The Kraken game was happening around the same time, so wasn't able to watch simultaneously, but I'm going to break down some of the film that we get as far as the highlights from this game and see on the defensive side in particular where we think the Kansas City Mavericks can shore things up, just because we know, again, this is a scrappy Tulsa team. We've seen the Kansas City Mavericks really take it to the Oilers and be dominant. And then we've also seen the Tulsa Oilers just get tired of being kind of bullied on the ice. And so this is not a team in Tulsa that is just going to take things lightly. So I like this matchup actually for the Kansas City Mavericks. You end the regular season on a high note, and then you have to prove it in the playoffs. And we know from covering the Seattle Kraken last year that perhaps Colorado came into our opening round series and they got kind of, hit in the mouth a little bit when they had to really play us. And so I want to make sure, and we will be talking to Tad throughout the playoffs. We got to get some times secure, but the Kansas City Mavericks have been super accommodating, and they know that we have locked on listeners that have been following, especially when the team is in Tulsa. So expect to hear some of that coming up. And again, I'll talk on Friday, tomorrow's episode, about how we're going to incorporate the Coachella Valley Firebirds in the mix. But again, they have a bye. So we're going to focus on the ECHL while also breaking things down step by step and maybe even player by player, what the Seattle Kraken need to work on. But on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kraken, you're going to hear from Jason J.D. Hernandez, the voice of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, at least at home games. He's the PA announcer and, of course, a member of the Locked On NHL and the greater Locked On Podcast Network. So JD is our insider. He knows the Coachella Valley Firebirds very well. So although the Seattle Kraken are not in the playoffs, we have two of our affiliates in the playoffs. And I think this is going to be good because there are going to be some changes that need to be made in the offseason. And we're going to get a firsthand look. And here on Locked On Kraken, I'm going to walk you through what's happening at our lower levels, our development levels, and who maybe can make the jump. Because if the Firebirds have some players that become a mainstay, kind of like we saw with Ty Cartier or Joey Decord this year, if they have players who become a mainstay at the top level, looking at you, Shane Wright, then that also is going to impact the Kansas City Mavericks. So we want to know who's performing in the postseason and who perhaps coming into training camp is going to be ready a la Ty Cartier and, of course, Joey Decord to fight for a spot. I love it. This is the sweet part. There's a lot of bitterness. And I say bitterness as I'm not bitter, but the taste is bitter for the Seattle Kraken season. And we're going to talk about that. But the sweet part is that we also still get to talk postseason, and I will have it for you here. Remember to be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another. We hold fast, we stay true, we keep it real, which is what we're going to do in the offseason. But we say loud and proud, even though it is officially the offseason for us, we still say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. Thanks for hanging out with me for the regular season. Thanks for bearing with me as I was getting through women's basketball season, but it's postseason hockey, baby, and we are ready to go. And dare I say, we are fired up. So the Kansas City Mavericks get their first win. The Coachella Valley Firebirds get a first round bye. So the future is bright. Let the children play. We'll talk about that and more. But now it's time to close out the show. And you might have noticed we got a new intro. So I hope you enjoy the new graphics. We're leveling up here. We're going to be ready for next season. You got to believe. Okay, that's the Mets fan in me. All right, thank you as always. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out.